All right, Q. Let's talk about some of the specific matchups that need to go one team's way for them to come out on top. When I look at the Raiders, I have mentioned the players that I'm aware of that I think are threats: Max Crosby, Brock Bowers. How does this game have to go for the Raiders to come out of Cincinnati with a win?
Well, they've got to get some consistent offensive play calling and execution, right? So Luke Getsy, the offensive play caller, has got to get pretty creative and get the playmakers the ball. You mentioned Brock Bowers, but Jacoby Myers is a really good playmaker as well. He's a guy that at one point in his career was a number one wide receiver that was back in New England. He's been a number two since he's been in Vegas because they had Devontae Adams. Well, there's no Devontae Adams, so now he's basically the number one wide receiver, but the number two target because Brock Bowers is definitely target number one. So those two guys definitely have to get involved. But Jake, they also have to get the run game going. And I know Cincinnati's been doing a better job with slowing down the run. Somehow, some way, the Raiders have to run the ball. I don't know how that's going to be. I don't know if they're going to have to run from on the outside. I don't know if they're going to have to get wide receivers involved in jet sweeps and Brock Bowers involved. I don't know what they have to do, but they have to find some form of a run game. They haven't really had it. They've had two games where they've gone over 100 yards. Once was against Cleveland, where they went for, I believe, a buck 52, and then another one against the Rams where they went over 122. Both teams are not very good at stopping the run. So if they can find something to exploit in Cincinnati's defense, they have to do it. But Alexander Madison, Zamir White, combination of the two, maybe Amir Abdullah, any of those guys that could run the rock have to do that. Brock Bowers is going to be able to get, a good 10 to 12 targets. He might get 8 or 9 catches. That's fine. But he's not going to be able to do it all himself. Jacoby Myers either. They're not going to be able to do it all themselves. And Gardner Minshew, as the quarterback, is not going to be doing it all himself either. I will say this. Don't be surprised if you see a package for Desmond Ridder. He's the quarterback that the Raiders just picked up off of waivers, or not off waivers, but off the Arizona Cardinals practice squad. And Antonio Pierce told us on Wednesday that they are trying to put together some packages for him. They put him in the game last week against the Chiefs, and there was a false start, so he came out and he never went back in. But they are trying to use his athleticism. So, that maybe that's a way that they could generate some of the run game. So if you see number 10, you see Desmond Ridder all of a sudden enter the game, who knows what's going to happen? He can throw the ball, but most likely they'll use his athleticism. But somehow, some way, they've got to get that run game going. So offensively, Bowers, Myers, and the run game have to be very effective. And that's going to fall on Luke Getsy to call a good game, but it's also going to fall on those offensive playmakers to execute a really good game as well.
Potentially opportunities for the Raiders to get explosive in the passing game this week with Bowers, with Myers, if the Bengals can't get a pass rush home. On the other side of things, just from the Bengals' perspective, when the Raiders have the ball on offense, it's pass rush to me. Can they get a pass rush this week? It's been maddeningly inconsistent. It's been poor far too often this year for the amount of money and draft picks the Bengals have spent on that defensive line, on that pass rush unit. They need to be willing to blitz. If they're not getting home, they weren't willing to blitz against the Eagles last week. If that's something they need to go to more often this week, need to see that adaptability a little bit quicker from that defense, and just need guys to win. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple. I did have one follow-up question, though. Have you seen a Brock Bowers carry this year yet? Because that was something that was fun to see when they went to it on occasion at Georgia.
Yeah, no, haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen it. Seen him lined up in the backfield once. Saw it a couple times in preseason. Haven't seen it in the regular season yet. So I'm interested to see when that's going to get added to the mix because I know it could be there. I know it can. But again, the play calling has been, pretty erratic, and a lot of folks are calling for Luke Getsy's head. But I think that, like I said, a lot of it is Getsy has a lot of blame, but the players have some blame as well with the execution and the way that they go about their offensive game plan is shooting themselves in the foot, right? Too many penalties, especially pre-snap penalties. Like I said, the false start with Ridder, like you get him in there to bring his athleticism to the game, and then you get a false start. So you can't do
Yeah.
that, right? And so that's just what bad teams do. As I mentioned, bad teams find a way to do bad things. And so the Raiders have been doing that consistently. They've been turning the ball over. They've got to play a clean game. That's something that I've been telling everyone every week. It's the same because they haven't been playing that clean. They turned the ball over one time last week, so it was better than what they had done the previous weeks, but still was a turnover, and they can't have that, and they can't have, like I said, dumb penalties, especially pre-snap penalties. That's going to burn you every time. For a team that needs to play almost a perfect game, they can't have those penalties, can't have those turnovers, and they've got to get creative offensively. What else is it that Cincinnati needs to do or needs to stay away from doing, I should say, to find a way to win this game?
Yeah, well, just want to mention Desmond Ridder, another Cincinnati
Yeah.
college product. Cincinnati fans obviously very
Trey
familiar
Tucker.
there.
He came from
Oh, there you
Cincinnati
go.
as well. Trey Tucker.
Also, we've got a DJ Turner on offensive receiver and a DJ Turner on defensive corner,
Yep.
and gonna see some DJ Turner on DJ Turner crime in this game potentially. We'll see if we get that matchup for the Bengals. He's playing mostly outside. It looks like the Raiders DJ Turner mostly playing in the slot, so
Mhm.
we may or may not see that one. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a team that's been turnover prone, mistake prone in the Raiders. I'm looking for the defense to make plays, whether that's in the pass rush, which again I'm desperately looking for every week from this team, or for just somebody else to make plays on the football. They've had a knack in the past in previous iterations of Bengals defenses to make the big play when they need it. They haven't gotten that enough this year. But on the offensive side of the ball, can they win without T. Higgins if they can't get T. Higgins back this week? If they're trying to make sure T's ready to go for the Thursday night game the Bengals have coming up after this regular Sunday game where they have to go on the road to play Baltimore on a short week, and
Mhm.
they are desperate to win that game to get back into the division, potentially get back to 500, trying to get closer to the top of what they see in the AFC North. Well, you got to get through a game without T. Higgins. And to do that, you're going to need to be able to block well. You're going to need to be able to handle Max Crosby. That's going to be largely Amarius Mims, the rookie first round pick on the right side, dealing with Crosby coming off the defense's left. And can they get more Jermaine Burton action in there this week and find a way to get him the ball? Because for a third round pick with tremendous talent and had some character issues, as in the words of his own mentor, TJ Hushmanzada, had his own issues, and it's been his own fault a little bit that he hasn't gotten on the field some. At the same time, to me, it's on this coaching staff to also get everybody ready to play better. And when you have a playmaker with the ability that Burton has shown in terms of the cutting ability, the route running understanding, if he can understand the playbook well enough to just do what he needs to do on a play-to-play basis, the Bengals can unlock something there, even without T. Higgins. So while certainly the focus should be on Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in this game, I expect those guys to continue to play well. The complementary pieces, Andre Yosavash, who hasn't done enough in the role he's had this year as wide receiver 3, the Tyler Boyd heir apparent, the running game in general, which has really been hampered by poor run blocking, Mike Gesicki, Jermaine Burton, these other pieces will need to emerge. And they'll need to find something consistent there to go along with Jamar Chase and when he gets back, T. Higgins. So talking about playmaking on defense, if the opportunities are theirs, you're talking about the Raiders giving teams those opportunities this year. And on offense, consistency is really it because Joe Burrow's playing at a really high level this year. Everything around him, outside of Jamar Chase, I would say, has largely been too much of a letdown too often. And it's not everything, obviously. I'm hyperbolizing a little bit there, but it's been a disappointing season to watch when they're getting that level of play from Burrow. And that was a question in the preseason that has largely been answered in the affirmative as to Joe Burrow continuing to play at a high level.
There you go. There you go. Sounds like a good breakdown. Sounds like it should be an interesting game to see what team can do what they have to do, right, to get out of their own way. And obviously, the Raiders are going to have to try to slow down Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. That's going to be that 1-2 punch. I'm interested to see. There's a really good matchup to look for. And I mentioned Jacorian Bennett earlier. How often is
Yeah.
Jacorian Bennett going to be matched up with Jamar Chase? That's good on good right there, right? I mean, and Jamar is fantastic. One of the best wide receivers in the league. There's no doubt about that. And obviously, Burrow can get him the ball early and often. Want to see how much they get tagged up and teamed up against each other, right? One-on-one, and see how the Raiders also defend that. What's the safety play look like? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention on Mr. Chase because, well, there should be. But Jacorian Bennett's been holding his own, so that's one of those matchups that I'm definitely paying attention to.